What do we need to do as a nation to ensure that we save and we protect the lives of young men who are taking their lives in a country that has the second highest suicide rate in the world after Russia? Dumelang Sambonani, hello South Africa. Expressions. This is definitely the place for you to air your views. I'm your host, Jacqueline Mapala, and our poll question today, as we continue this very important conversation, is to say, are we doing enough to support young men on the ground when it comes to mental health? But before I get into this very important conversation, I had an opportunity to visit the campus at University of Limpopo just to find out what is the support that they are providing for their students as well as the community as a whole. Take a look at this insert. Expressions is putting a very important spotlight on the issue of mental health among young men in South Africa, in particular rural young men. As a show, we want to make a positive impact in making a difference in terms of this culture of silence as well as stigma that is around men when it comes to mental health issues. Now, we're on location in Limpopo at the University of Limpopo. We're going to be speaking to some of their professional and staff members who are assisting students and young people across this particular community when it comes to mental health. We want to make sure that you as a young man out there, you get the information, the education and insight when it comes to this particular issue. I'm going to be speaking to a clinical psychologist by the name of Mpomunama, and obviously a little bit later I'm going to be visiting their health center. So stay with me.
Our students come with presenting challenges depending on what is it that they're going through. It might be relational. You find that they're not really coping with their intimate relationships or family relationships. Sometimes it's lecturer-student relationship, and mostly some it's medical related problems. You find that they're struggling to come to terms with whatever that they're diagnosed with medically. And mostly they're presenting with mental related problems. So you'll find that it's anxiety. Now as we're talking, they're busy with their examinations. So there's a lot of stress. Most of them are under a lot of pressure.
How serious is this issue of mental health among young people, but also here on campus?
It's a serious problem. I think it's basically around issues of maybe they're still young, they are not yet experiencing the real matters, but then it is the young people that are going through the most. On a ratio of 1 to 10, we see more of female clients compared to male clients. I would say it's understandable, but then it is a silent killer as well. And that's the notion in terms of the socialization and how male children are being brought up. You don't cry, you don't show your emotions. That's a sign of weakness. It's not helping because they're not rocks. They're individuals, they're human beings. As much as they have the flesh, they also have the emotional side of them that they need to take into account. So it's very important that one puts themselves first and take into account that it's okay to feel that they're feeling. And it's not a sign of weakness if they are to seek assistance.
Students face academic stress, more especially first-year students, because of the pressure that they get when they go to higher institution, whereby the pressure that they get is different from the high school, because they have a supervision from their parents and their guardians. So here they have to be on their own.
Why is it important for men to take their mental health seriously?
It is very serious. They should take it very seriously. And if they can only realize that they are also human beings and it is right not to feel okay. It does not matter whether you are a female or you are a male. It is okay not, and it is also okay to ask for help when you need help. So they should take it serious. As we've seen, cases of suicide amongst men that is going on. It's a cry for help. I wish it can open many people's, and in our facility, we are here for them.
It's absolutely incredible what the University of Limpopo is actually doing on the ground to make sure that they provide enough mental support, not just for young men on the ground, but, you know, the community as a whole. But of course, I'm not having this conversation by myself. Gentlemen, a very warm welcome to Expressions.
Thank you.
You know, it's actually quite painful when we're having these kinds of conversations because, I mean, you know, Sibonelo, we're coming back. And, you know, before it was Rikirik, now we are talking about Siyabonga Zubane, who is obviously the celebrated actor from Gomora, who also committed suicide. And I guess the question really comes down to what needs to happen in order for us to be able to save the young men in our communities, in our homes, in our families. Let me start with you.
All right, thank you so very much, JP. You know, in order to be able to solve a problem effectively, you must get to the root cause of it. So when you look at the psychological makeup of a man, there was a research that was done which actually revealed that when a woman is pregnant with a male child, I think on the 26th or the 28th week of pregnancy, there's a part of the brain that is called the right hemisphere of the brain. There is a part of it that clears off, and that is the part of the brain that has to do with the emotional expression. So it should not come as a surprise why men are not so good in terms of emotionally expressing themselves, what they are going through. A man would rather sober in silence instead of talking about what's eating them. So we need to understand where men are coming from in terms of their psychological makeup. And also, as a man, there are two types of values that we have. We have got what we call the intrinsic value as well as the acquired value. The acquired value is that one which will come from your achievements, your status as a person. So a male child is raised and conditioned to be more attached to the acquired value. So men have never been taught to say that even if you don't have anything, you are still something. So the being something of a man always have to come from something outside of them.
Okay, which is quite interesting because, I mean, and I think the viewers will obviously see this a little bit later in the show. I had an opportunity to have like a town hall where I got to speak to the students at University of Limpopo. And young men, clearly they're going through something. There's a lot of pressure on the ground. And I just want to find out from you, Jerry, as a motivational speaker, what do we need to say to young men out there to encourage them, to give them the courage to speak out and express themselves and break that cycle of silence and stigma? You know, to say, like in 2022, we're still talking like that.
You know, Jake, thank you. One of the biggest problems that we are facing is that there's a saying that says indoda ikhali, you know, and I think it's high time that we cancel that saying to say, no, as a man, you must cry, you must speak out. You know, I always tell young people that your condition is not your conclusion. I think that is one of the powerful statement I always use, that as a man, as a boy child, whatever that you go through, it is not the end. You must always fight. The most important part about this is that young men need to have a strong mental strength. And we must create, what I always do is that I create programs of youth whereby we encourage them as young people to say, guys, whatever that you go through, you need to speak out. You understand? Because men tend to keep things to themselves and they don't speak. At the end of the day, you hear that someone committed suicide.
Okay, but let's talk about what do they need to do? I mean, if you, and I know it's too, I don't want to oversimplify this, but if there was a step-by-step to say, this is how you need to speak out, taking into consideration the socialization. I mean, with statistics that say 37 per 100,000 of men will commit suicide compared to women, only 10 to 100,000. There's a problem in our nation, and it's a crisis. It's a pandemic. So how do we give them the building blocks, the solutions to say this is how you speak out? But who do you speak to? That's the most important. Who do you speak to?
True. That's very true, because I think it's not just a matter of crying out, but you need to cry out to the right people, the people who genuinely care. You know, I always see Emotional expression is always best when it comes from understanding that I am not the only one going through it, because pain has that aspect of it, it sort of isolates you from the larger community of humanity. You'll feel as if I'm the only one battling with this. Therefore, because I think I'm the only one, it becomes difficult for me to talk about it because I'm seeing myself as the only person going through it, And also, men must also be able to separate what's happening in their minds and also what's happening out there, because there is that struggle in terms of separating what's happening in you. I might think that if I tell you, Jackie, this and that, this is how she's going to react. That is a thought. Men must come to a point of not believing everything that they think, It is not everything that you think that is true as a person. Perhaps the reason why they choose to die inside is because of there are things that there are certain ways in which they think people are going to react if they come out that they're struggling with 1, 2, 3.
And you're right? And I think for young men out there, and I love what you've just said, Siyabonga, because you're not a sum total of just everything that you think. You're not alone, and I think that's what we need to reiterate. Yes. But I loved what you said, Jerry. Your condition does not determine your conclusion. Yeah. So whatever you're going through as a young man in South Africa, hopefully this show is encouraging you to express yourself and speak out and look for help so that you are not one of the statistics that we have just basically labeled here on the show. But we continue with this very important conversation. We're asking, are we doing enough to support young men when it comes to mental health? But I think in particular, rural young men in South Africa. You're watching Expressions. We'll be back right after this.
Sanibonani bafethu. Njani? Siyaphila nathi. It's great to have you guys on the show. I just want to know, are you guys getting enough mental health support, ikakhulukazi here on campus, with exam time and all the pressures that comes with being on campus?
In this university, we have a lot of things, and I believe that almost every other person who is in need of mental health can go to the School of Counseling and do some consultations to receive the much-needed mental health that they'll be looking for.
Do we have men that are under pressure?
I think we have men who are under pressure at this point of time, because some of the men think that it's okay not to seek help from the professionals.
I know several people from my former high school in Alexandra. So both of them were my friends. Actually, one of them tried to commit suicide. 2 of them succeeded. And it was a very difficult time. It affected our classmates, affected their parents, affected the whole school.
Us as men, we're not usually as comfortable as when it comes to speaking about our problems. There's a stigma that's weighing upon, especially the black males, that says no daikali.
The parents have to normalize that boys can also cry. Boys also have feelings, so you don't have to bottle everything inside. This thing did not start now as we are teenagers and young adults. It starts as we are kids.
As a man, you have to go back internally and do some self-introspection. Check yourself mentally and emotionally, physically. How healthy are you?
I do believe that even though no one can solve your problems but you must still strive to get help. You must not stand and suffer alone. Yes, they won't solve your problems, but they will ease the stress and the pressure that comes with the problems you have.
So those were some of the comments that we got from our town hall, and a big thank you obviously to Umko for having those very meaningful conversations with young people on the ground, specifically there at the University of Limpopo. And of course, we continue this very important conversation around whether we're doing enough to support young men in our communities when it comes to issues of mental health. And again, I'm not going to have this conversation by myself. I'm joined by Utabelo Bahangani, who is from at least the WITS student accommodation there, and he's the chairman. He's very important leadership. And then of course Charles is back again with us, Charles Mpepo, who represents the Alex Men's Forum. And I think this conversation is very important for us to revisit, even though it's a double-edged sword, is it not, Charles, to say, Uti, you know, if people like Siyabonga and Rick did not make headline news, we would not be having this conversation, right? What are we missing? What are we not getting right in ensuring Uti we don't have those kinds of statistics in cases like that?
On my side, I think what is missing is a safer space for men, where they can be able to walk in freely and talk to some other men inside. Because if I can come to you and talk to you, I can't be open. But if you can get somebody, a man talking to another man, and then they can be able to open up. Because since this show started last time, I see an influx of people coming to my office and open up and said, I'm going through this and this. How can I get help? And then they're getting help and they go out and share with other people. We're missing that part.
Continue.
And even more outreaches, because we need to be more outreach like we are here. The nation is listening so that they can able to get help through WhatsApp. We got a WhatsApp line where you can WhatsApp, because sometimes you are far from Alex, you can WhatsApp and talk to someone.
And you know, I think the last time you were here and you know, discussing this particular issue, I don't think we gave you proper time. Tell us, you know, if people are watching you right now, you know, young men are watching right now the show, where do they find you? I mean, there's a WhatsApp number. What's the number exactly?
Yes.
You know, what campaigns do you have on the ground? Give us all that information, just so that we're able to put it out there clearly for young men, just so that they know what the support is actually out there.
Yeah, the support is there. We are based at the Alexander, at the hostel. Hostel is one of the hotspots. We are there. The center is there. It's a walk-in supporting center. Walk-in support center. So you just walk in and you get the mentor to talk to. And then the lifeline is closer also. We've got 2 offices. It's a lifeline. And then the mentor office, where you can get somebody. We can start with the mentor. We talk to that person. We see this person has some mental issues that can need to address by the lifeline, so that we refer next door. Next door, they attend to that person.
Tabelo, it was important to obviously also to bring you on board, because as much as we went to UL and looked at the support services that are there in terms of mental health, and obviously those mental health services are not just there for young men, but obviously we wanted to make sure there's something on the ground that actually was specifically focusing on young men. I want to know for you, I mean, you're the leadership there at the accommodation and so forth. Like, you know, what is going on? You know, are you guys utilizing the support services that are there? Are there support services that are there in the student accommodation that you're part of there at WITS? I mean, tell us what's going on the ground in terms of young men, because your campus, at least your residents specifically, is young men all around.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I would like to start with, there is enough, actually more than enough support system there. But then the thing is, as young people, actually as men, we are not aware that mental health is there. We don't know where to start. We don't know how are we feeling. We are influenced by a lot of things. We don't know what's happening with us. But we want to chase the fact that there is mental health while not knowing where to go. But there is enough support system. Whereas we as men, we are not aware of our mental issues. I mean, the country started paying attention to mental health to men just after popular people started committing suicide. But suicide has been there. Men have been committing suicide since back then. But now that is being done by celebrities, starting to, I think the country is starting to feel the heat. Mental health is there. I think that's all from my side.
What is the solution according to you? I mean, you obviously occupy a very important position, and you are very much aware of the fact that this is something that is happening on the ground. What is the solution? What's the way forward to just assisting young men to speak out and find the assistance that they require?
Okay, let me diverge a bit. When HIV started, we didn't know a lot about it, but through awareness programs, through T-shirt being printed, through billboards, advertising HIV, so on and forth. We started being aware of it. We started coming up with ways, a lot of ways to deal with it, to a point where by today, some of other people, they are no longer even scared of HIV. They know that it's dealt with. There are ways to deal with. Same applies to mental health. If we get a way of putting it out there, making people aware that it is there, these are the steps that you can do, like making comrades aware out there that mental health is there, and these are the things that you can do to overcome mental health. I feel like it will be enough.
Tabel and Charles, thank you so very much for having this conversation. And hopefully we'll get to a point, Kochaye, where the education is there and mental health is not some dirty word that young men cannot talk about. And of course, we continue this very important conversation. Make sure you engage with us on our social media platforms. Remember, Facebook, Instagram, Kaufela. We are there. We are there. Talk to us. Let us know what you're going through. We continue with this very important conversation after the break. You're watching Expressions. You're still watching Expressions, your #1 youth current affairs show. As we commemorate and celebrate Youth Month, we put on the spotlight the issue around mental health, which is a huge problem in our society. And of course, we're asking you on the show simply this: are we doing enough to provide mental health support for men in South Africa? Because we've been seeing that the suicide rate among young men has been extremely, extremely high, with South Africa having the second highest suicide rate in the whole entire world after Russia. So we're coming up with solutions that hopefully will give you the kind of assistance that you require as young men. And guys, we obviously have to wrap this conversation up, but I think what is important is, what's the way forward? What are the solutions? How do we save lives? Because, Norman, we're tired of hearing, you know, that another young man, his youth has been cut before its prime. What's the way forward?
I think the way forward, firstly, is to have programs to encourage young people, young men, boy child. We go to schools, we go to communities, to churches, and motivate and encourage young people. And then the second one is to encourage consistently men to speak out about their issues, whatever that they are going through, and share our life experiences, because some of us, we've been through that. We grew up in abusive families, in domestic violence environment. We encourage them how we overcame, you understand? So I think the way forward is to come up with programs, go out there, speak to young people, have tours. You understand? We must unite and speak to men.
And for you, Siyabonga?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Just to add on that, speaking up, I feel that it will always be the main thing if we are to save our men. Men must speak, and that will come from perceiving yourself as a human being first before you see yourself as a man. Because if I see myself as a human first, it means I will also understand that I'm not immune to anything that happens to other human beings, and that it will also be normal for me to speak about the hardships, difficulties, and pangs that comes with being human without being ashamed of them.
Look, and I think we can never do justice to an issue like this, because honestly speaking, we have to always make sure that we continue having these kinds of conversations, because really, so long as there's one young man who takes their life, then it means that the conversation needs to continue. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming to the show. Young men, Kochaye, like they said, you know, there's power in vulnerability, there's power in being able to express yourself. And I think, do not feel that you're alone, and hopefully a show like this has inspired you, if you are struggling or you know someone that is struggling, to express yourself. From me, Jacqueline Maphala, and the Expressions team, thank you so very much for watching. Be safe out there. Adios, muchachos. Bye. Thanks for watching.